Welcome back, and joining us for a look at the day's markets action is Imtiaz Suliman from Sentio Capital. Thank you so much for your time, Imtiaz. After the dovish comments that we got from Fed Chair Jerome Powell on Friday, I would have expected the market to actually be significantly higher today, but it seems that the only place where we're seeing that optimism is on the rand.
Yeah, I think we did see a bit of a rally last week. There was some rotation today, both in our market as well as the US. What we're seeing out of the US is the rotation into some of the small and mid-cap stocks, and out of that Magnificent Seven, which is the technology-heavy sector that's done fantastically well. I think what you'll see is Nvidia is reporting on Wednesday, and that will be a big bellwether for the AI theme and the technology sector in general, given that they've been the dominant company and they're the biggest, chip maker. So that's going to set the tone for the technology sector in general and some direction for that Mag 7 stocks.
Ooh, and I'm sure on a Thursday we'll be talking about Nvidia all throughout the day. Let's go into some of the counters that came out with numbers today on the JSE MTS. Starting off with the education sector, Stadio interim results. There we did see significant growth in the student numbers, double-digit increase from both from the top to the bottom line. We did see that share price climbing over 6% at some point. Was this an A-plus kind of result?
Yeah, I think Stadio is a beneficiary of quality education. They've got a hybrid model of both distance learning as well as in-person learning, and that's been growing quite nicely. So student numbers were up 9% year on year, and that translated into good revenue growth. And their plans and prospects are still quite rosy going forward. There's a number of different educational offerings and programs that they're waiting for approval. And I think as those come through, it will add to the total offering that they have to the market. And given that we've seen, the universities overwhelmed by student numbers, Stadio is well positioned to benefit from some of that overflow that we're seeing.
All right. Well, let's go to a more diversified counter there in the private education space. Advotech, they released their results as well today. We also did see that share price ticking up by over 2% at some point. We did see growth across the board there as well, except some pressure there in the resourcing division. Your assessment of that report card?
Yeah, I think again for them, you've seen overall student numbers up 6%. But that did translate into better operating profit, given that there was tight cost control and some positive operating leverage, which led to a 1% increase in their operating margin and good earnings growth on the back of that. They've also brought down the dividend cover, given the strong cash generation that they do generate, which meant that the dividend was up quite nicely. And I think given the growth prospects that they have, there's a number of new campuses and schools that they're building out and expanding. It bodes well for further student growth, and they're seeing some early successes with some of the new schools that they've built. So I think again the public sector woes are positive for the likes of Advotech and Stadio, and we've seen the benefits come through.
Well, as we're talking about growth, let's go to the other side of the spectrum where we are not seeing any growth. Italtal also came out with their results today, annual numbers, flat turnover, and then obviously as you went down to the bottom line, all you saw was a reduction in that growth, but an increase though in the total dividend, and they also declared a special dividend. Is Italtal trading relatively well in this kind of environment?
It's been a tough environment. They were a big beneficiary of the COVID lockdowns and people working from home. And on the back of that, people upgrading their home spaces, their workspaces. That's now passed. And then we saw effectively a cost of living crisis with high inflation, which impacts them quite a bit, given that it's more of a discretionary spend type. And I think what we're seeing is, again, slow trading environment for them. But the prospects do look better. I mean, if we look at a year out, we should get some interest rate cuts. We should see inflation coming down. And the lack of housing, the backlog of housing in South Africa in general, will bode well for the likes of ETL Tile.
All right. Imtiaz, let's get to your stock pick for today. What are you choosing?
Yeah, I'm going with AVI. AVI is a consumer brands company. They've got some well-known brands like Baker's Biscuits, Five Roses Tea, Green Cross Shoes that they own as well. And, for them, they've managed this price-volume dynamic very well in terms of making sure volumes don't drop off quite significantly by lowering the prices, but then also not lowering prices too much so that their margin gets impacted. I think going forward, we're going to see some softening of the input prices, which would be beneficial for their overall operating margins. And again, it's a company that's very well managed, well run, and they do pay out quite a generous dividend. And every 2 years or so, you do get a special dividend on top of the ordinary dividend. So a good total return from a cash flow perspective for the investor. And again, I think the environment is moving in their favor from a consumer discretionary perspective.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time and for your analysis on what has moved investors' money in today's trading session. Imtiaz, that was Imtiaz Suliman from Sentio Capital.